Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth in Story, and I'm here to take a look at Healers of the Earth Oracle by Mandy Peterson. Now, this says Emerald House Publishing. I'm pretty sure this is what we would consider a self-published deck. I think she sells her decks on Etsy. I'll put a link below on that. This is interesting because this was actually a deck that I had a few people ask me if I had or would do a review on. And then the creator contacted me to ask me if I would be interested in doing a review. So since people had asked me about it, I thought, okay, sure. I'll take a look at this. The art is not typically the kind of art that I would purchase for myself, simply because it's more of that photo manipulation, I guess you would say, or digital art. You know, it's interesting because we have these terms now that sometimes get a little bit mixed, right? So there's digital art, which can be the exact same thing as, say, a sketcher. So you can use digital means to sketch and paint, and you're putting in every stroke, and there's really no difference in terms of the medium. And then there is more what I would call, I guess, photo manipulation or digital manipulation, where you're taking different maybe pre-existing images and working with those, and it's a valid form of, I would say, closer to akin to collage art than to, say, digital art. So some of these images are similar to what you might find in some mass-produced decks, such as Hay House decks and things of that nature, that aren't always my favorite style of art, which is completely a personal and subjective thing. However, what really did interest me about this when I took a closer look at it, when people were asking me if I would do a review of it, is I really liked the way that she did the keywords and what she's doing with the deck overall. And so it's quite interesting to me, and so I'm excited to take a look at this with you. Again, it's called Healers of the Earth Oracle, 73 Divination Cards and Guidebook. And the creator is Mandy Peterson. So it comes in this really fantastic slide out box. I'm a big fan of, you know, little drawer boxes and things like that. I think it's amazing. It comes with a nice book here, which is about 183 pages. Here, Healers of the Earth Oracle. I like the simplicity of it. I like the look of this. I think it looks really sharp and clean and will look nice on a shelf. Those kind of visual things do play a role in things, right? And I like the simplicity of this guidebook as well. But we're going to come back to this in a second. Let me just get the cards out of here. So then it has a tuck box. Part of the issue with tuck boxes that do this, where it has an insert on here. Now this is foam, which is nice. I like that this is foam, but the cards do slide behind it. I found in the past you can fix this by putting like a bead of glue all the way around and letting that dry really good so that they can't slide underneath it, because that can be a little bit of annoying. But I really like that this is foam and not like a cardboard insert that's just going to smash and fall apart. So I quite like that. I just need to go through and put a bead of foam there, so that the cards don't constantly slide behind it. But all in all, I think this is a really nice kind of setup to the box and all of that. You will see that there are actually, the backings are all the same. However, there are different suits, I suppose you might say, that are, we can tell by the back because it has the name. So for example, here we have personal physical, collective physical, collective motion. We're going to talk about that. Emotional. We're going to talk about the different ones. But you can see there's different suits. And what's interesting is that it almost creates two decks, because she has a spread in her guidebook where you can pull a card from, you know, as you would with the images, and then you can pull a card with the back in terms of what these different keywords on the back say, which is something new. You know, I haven't seen something like that before, and I love it when people are trying out new things like that. So let's set those aside for a minute though and take a look at the guidebook. Okay, let me zoom in here a little bit. There we go. So you've got a nice table of contents, which I like. The cards are numbered, which also makes them easier to find in the book, which I'm a fan of. She gives some acknowledgments. She talks about how that the deck was created to be used in a variety of ways. These ways arose from a desire to create a divination tool that would help empaths and earth sensitives, who comprise a large part of my clientele, to connect with and understand their sensitivity and symptoms. However, the deck was also created to be used as a regular oracle for those who may not be earth sensitives. Excuse me. It says this guidebook is actually a smaller guidebook of 2. It has different spreads, options, and definitions for using the cards as a personal oracle only. Information about the more extensive guidebook, which includes healing charts and instructions for how to use the cards, can be found at her website, which I will stick a link to in the directions below, or in the description below. I'll come back to that second guidebook in a middle. She talk about how these are not meant to be feel-good cards, but it is supposed to be a healing divination tool. And so they're it does talk about with healing, as with certain spiritual disciplines and ways of reaching enlightenment, there's often a desire to know what parts of the self, emotions, or patterns are unproductive and can be released. Sometimes with healing issues, a full recovery isn't possible unless certain memories, emotions, or aspects of the self can be fully faced. So it also talks about how there are an environmental theme here. And so it talks about how if you don't want those in there, you can always remove the cards that act as negative triggers or simply use them without the guidebook. So you can kind of do what you want. Now, one of the things that I really liked about this is that there are actual suits. I'm actually a big fan of oracle decks with suits. I think it adds a layer of meaning and dimension, and we don't see it a lot in oracle decks. And so we have air and atmosphere 1 through 8, land and earth 9 through 16, fire and smoke 17 to 24, water and rain, ice and snow, technology and industry, purification and release, spiritual hygiene, health and healing, and then an unknown card. And then the backs of the cards have their own categories that can be used for obtaining a deeper insight, which is covered in a later chapter. And so then there goes into more information. She does talk a little bit about why there are skulls. This type of deck, I think maybe she's assuming people would have a little bit of difficulty with the visuals of skulls, but she does talk about these as being crystal skulls that have a mystical and healing symbolism involved in them. And that they can always be interpreted in 2 ways. The first way recognizes that crystal skulls are simply crystals that have been carved in the shape of a skull. And the second way is to connect them to the ancient skulls that have been found in various places on the earth as actual crystal skulls. So she goes into talking about that. And then using spread, she has a 1 card, a 4 card, an interesting 8 card here. I thought this was an options to explore, past, present, lesson, and probable future, and then some external factors. I think that looks really interesting. And then she goes into the oracle messages. So for each of the cards, you have 2 pages, and that does have a reversed message for each one of the cards as well, should you choose to use reversals. So going all the way through the cards, then we get to the 4th chapter, which talks about using the backs of the cards. Now, again, because she was trying to keep this as a small manual that could fit into the box, it doesn't have all of the different ways that you could use this, but there is a further manual that you can get from this particular website, which again I will put a link to. And so you can use this the back as identifying what to make the focus. You does talk about using a 1-card spread, just pulling it from the back, and then a 2-card spread, pulling one face up and one from the back. And how to go ahead and do that. And then it has a meaning for each of the cards. In fact, I'm going to stick a sticky note, so we'll come back to that. But she gives us a meaning for what, if those came up in a in the reading, what layer would that add to the rest of the reading, which we'll look at it after we go through the rest of the cards as we normally would. I checked the website, and it doesn't look like the full version guidebook is ready yet. There are just access to the PDFs of the smaller guidebook, but apparently there is a larger one coming that will go into more depth and have more charts and things of that nature. But in terms of using it as an oracle, this would have everything that was needed in order to use it and function in that way for the cards. So we will, of course, read one of these so you can get an idea of what you are getting in terms of a oracle message. Actually, let me put 0 here onto the front, which you can see the 0 card is on the front of the deck. So let me zoom in on these, and then, whoops, wrong way. Zoom in here. So again, you can see the back. This is the unknown card. It doesn't have a particular suit. It is reversal. It is reversible with the same word on either side, so you can be able to use reversals, which it does give you the reversal meaning. So it has the number, the image, the title, the intangible, and then keywords, what I think are really unobtrusive, which is nice. Indeterminate, formless, and unknowable is what the keywords for this is. I quite like that. I do appreciate keywords on a card far more than any large amount of text or anything like that. So I quite like that. But let's read the whole message so that we can, see how she writes. The upright message is, if you've drawn this card desiring to know the outcome of a situation or what your future holds, it indicates that the outcome and your future are presently unknowable or not in form. Instead, the actions that you or others take regarding your situation may affect how things turn out, or possibly someone's indecision or wavering could affect a direction or course. As a result, you may be required to go with the flow a little more. If this causes you anxiety, try to face your fear of the unknown, or of things not working out. With matters of spiritual growth, perhaps there's a concept you're meant to grasp that cannot be understood tangibly, or you're urged to focus on your connection to the intangible and spiritual over the material. Alternatively, this card could be encouraging you to open to receiving love from the universe, knowing you're the expression of love at your core. I like the idea of this card. I have another deck, and I cannot tell you for the life of me what it is, where there's this concept of that you get a specific card. I may have a couple like that when it comes up, the answer is just, I don't know. It's like a pendulum, right? That sometimes these energies aren't in full enough sway to get an idea, or this idea that just becoming comfortable with not knowing. I like that. Reverse messages. Drawing this card in its reverse position can signify that you may have lost the ability to go with the flow, or you're looking for a tangible answer or outcome regarding a question or situation that doesn't presently have one. Maybe an outcome depends on a course of action taken by yourself or another that is undecided thus far. Or perhaps your fear that you won't succeed with manifesting something desired is causing you to act out in ways that are self-sabotaging. If any of this sounds like you, this card urges you to find a way to shift your focus. You can do this through letting go of force and practicing a little more self-surrender. Be willing to embrace whatever your future holds with courage and positive outlook. Try to let go of any tendency you have to look for a sense of self-worth or identity in the external world, a relationship, or another person, and instead allow yourself to find your worth within, in the intangible. In some ways, I feel like, the intangible, whether it's upright or reversed, kind of means the same thing. May not be the best example of the card, which makes sense. I mean, you're talking about something that's intangible, and that idea is going to be there with whether it's reversed or not reversed. But I quite like, I think she's clear and to the point. There is a little of that supportive healing energy, as you would expect, in terms of being open to receive the universe, love from the universe, and knowing that you're the expression of love at the core. But it doesn't, the whole message is not, or sometimes with healing type decks, the entire message gets so, you are one of the universe, and there's nothing that you need change because everything is perfect. That gets a little, for me anyways, a little bit frustrating when reading these types of decks. I will still end up liking some of the decks, but I have a hard time with the guidebooks, where I felt like this one, in the example, other examples that I read, while those core concepts, which are important, are there, it doesn't seem to be so much sugar-coated and in your face in a way that's a little bit like, ugh, okay, maybe this is the way everything is supposed to be in the universe, but I'm not really happy with how things are. How do we get out of this? Give me some information. So I like that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the cards. Some of these cards are absolutely stunning. I think that the only cards artistically that I have an issue with are the cards with human figures in them. And that's just the case with this, more this style of artwork. That they often look like they're unfinished, like they're not fully finished art representations of human figures. But then the ones that don't have human figures in them, I think are absolutely stunning. This is gorgeous. The clock is ticking. It's time to act. Preventable loss if you act on it, or a deadline that's ticking away. I quite like that. Celestial encounter, heavenly from the stars beyond the veil. So maybe a message or an encounter of something that is, not of this realm, which would be interesting to see that in a reading. Here we have a jester. This is personal preference. The image is cool. I'm just not a fan of jesters, but I like, it's got the hands in the head, cloud formations, cloudy thoughts, indecision, feeling a little bit confused, which I think is interesting juxtaposition with the black and white of the checkerboard. Everything seems to be black and white, but it's still really confusing. So I actually like that juxtaposition there. And I do like a cloudy thoughts. It has a cartomancy feel, like the cloud card in Lenormand. Here we have bird's eye view, seeing the big picture, a higher perspective. I feel like I said, like these are images I may have seen before in maybe some free, what's the name of that word? The Creative Commons license. But I do think she does a really good, and I could be wrong about that. She doesn't talk, I think, directly about the artwork in the guidebook. But this is kind of cute. I mean, she's looking down there and getting a bird's eye view from up on the moon. So I do like that. Plus, I love cards that say, get a perspective, right? Here we have round and round, scatteredness, aimlessness, repetition. So we have that sense of the carousel, round and round and round we go. I quite like that. Aimlessness, repetition, being kind of stuck on the merry-go-round. I think that's a cool concept. Here we have the black swan. And again, it's not at all terrible, so please don't take this as a criticism. Everybody has different likes and dislikes of styles of art. What I have learned now, having done as many reviews as I have done, is that sometimes I need to not let that stop me from working with a deck, because there have been decks that don't have my particular style of artwork that I love, that don't have it, and they end up being amazing decks to work with. And so I'm kind of learning that lesson, unless it's just like, oh, I just can't stand this artwork. If it's just not my particular style that I'd hang on my wall, that doesn't mean it's not something that's not going to be really good to work with in a deck. This one I think is actually pretty cool looking, other than maybe the kind of peace sign over the eyes. But a surprise, seeing things in hindsight. I see you. I don't know. There's something about that. I feel like it's like a dance where you put your hand up like that over your eyes, or it's just me being a goof when I dance. But I like the concept of the black swan. And sort of being this surprise. I almost feel like just before we see this, that she had like a black swan mask on, and then the mask has been lifted up, and it's been, you know, the surprise kind of energy. But there's so much. I mean, the idea of a card about hindsight, I think, is fantastic, because, you know, there's so much that's a lot more clear, isn't it, when we're seeing things in hindsight. So I love that as a concept in a card. Flight plan. This is adorable. I mean, come on, we've got a pumpkin. Having a plan that is a good thing. However, they maybe didn't plan the timing quite right, because obviously the coachmen have already been turned back into mice, and so maybe a little more lack of closure because they didn't maybe finish things up right. But this idea of a trip or a disappearance, Cinderella just disappearing into the night. Here we have the magic beanstalk, ascension, elevation, reaching new heights. So we have like a unicorn on here, and then we have part of the magic beanstalk here. So I'm not sure exactly what let's take a peek now. I'm just curious if the guidebook tells us sort of any indication of the image. Reaching new heights. You could be making methods to improve yourself. Yeah, it's kind of just this idea of climbing the beanstalk. So I'm not entirely sure what the unicorn has to do in the image, but it's a pretty image. Here we have the dining table. I do like some of her titles for cards. Like such as this, the dining table, which just seems like a cartomancy feel to it. This is a date or a social gathering, or actually sitting down to get nourishment. The ways in which we see what the energy that surrounds a dining table. I think that's kind of cool. Here we have Field of Dreams, bounty, sustainability, a good harvest. This is adorable. Fruitful labors. Growth, birth, manifestation, a harvest. Quarantine. So this is a quarantine energy. Retreat, seclusion, or an inward journey, which is interesting because we think of quarantine as there being some kind of a disease or something that you have to quarantine away. So you could go that way. Certainly, I would think in shadow, but there's different reasons why we may retreat. And I'm curious as to why she wouldn't choose like retreat or seclusion even. Wouldn't have the connotations of like disease that I think of with quarantine. You or someone you care about could feel hypersensitive or lacking in psychic, emotional, or physical immunity. Okay. Whoever is feeling vulnerable could be prone to becoming infected with other people's negativity. Oh, that's interesting. So it might be best for that person to be quarantined, not just for disease, but for picking up on other people's emotions, just being in a vulnerable state. So that's interesting. I like it. So I love some of these images. They're sweet. They kind of remind me of the Colette Baron Reid one, Oracle of, I don't know. I can't think of it. Wasn't the Oracle of Maps, but the second one. There's a sweetness, but also sort of a quirkiness to them that I quite like. Fungi funeral, moderation, sobriety, and healthy choices. Fungi funeral. I mean, I like that she's not picking sort of plain old titles that we've seen 100 times. Lately, you might be realizing too much fun, overindulgence, or avoidance of responsibility. Because giving a pleasure to others isn't always easy, you may have to undergo a process of release. So kind of having a funeral for those things that are kind of overrunning you, perhaps. I'll be so interested to see how these read. So here we have Nature Sprite, Fairies, Love of Nature, and Eco-Friendliness. So again, these are sort of images that I kind of equate to some of the Hay House decks. Again, no disrespect to the person who did this. I couldn't do it. But that's the style of art that's there. But I love the greenery here. I like, I mean, she looks like a nature sprite. And so it works really well, I think. Cherished Pet, I think this is gorgeous. Receiving Care, Attention, Domestication. Shaky Foundation. So here we have another carousel image, but it's very clear with this sort of being on top of this rocky, this is very easily looks like the whole thing's going to fall down. So you can very clearly see that in the image. Let There Be Light, finding solution, illumination, and growth. I like the planter here. You have the sense of light, but then you do get that idea of growth as well. Here we have Bottled Up. So we have somebody here like an elf or a fairy that is stuck inside of a glass bottle, being repressed, pent up, needing release. Quench Your Thirst, be receptive, rehydrate, replenish yourself. So you could actually mean you need more water, but then there's a lot of different ways of filling your bucket up and keeping yourself nourished and refreshed. There's a lot of different ways that could come up. Now, I wanted to point out, sorry, these are sliding a little bit. I wanted to point out that I saw somebody on For Love of Cards probably who trimmed it. It was really beautiful, and the creator seems to be really kind of paying attention to what people want and is releasing a borderless version of this deck, which looks really lovely the way that she did it, as well as how she placed the titles on it as well. So if you really like the look of this but don't want to trim off the beautiful gilded edges, then you might want to take a look at the borderless that's coming out, because that looked really good. And I did see also on her website when I was looking that she did purchase these different images from two, I think, of the sort of public domain type image that you can purchase these at, and then add in different, so it has that digital collaging effect, as I thought, just to be clear about that. So Quench Your Thirst. Here we have Pick Up Your Sword, Take a Stand, Be Heard, Support a Cause. I like this idea. It's not just the sword, it's the action of, it's time to pick up your sword and sort of take that stand. I quite like that. I really like the the titles or the concepts behind them. There are some that you don't always see in decks. It kind of reminds me in some of the types of I don't know what it is. It's not so much the art, but it's some of the active ways that's being, the cards and the card, a little bit of a mix of cartomancy. So a little bit reminds me of, I'm totally blanking and I can't see it from here. It's the one that's in the box, a book box. I can't remember. If I remember to, I'll try to put it in the description box below, but I wouldn't hold your breath because I have a horrible memory. Sacred Smoke, so clearing the air, purging negativity, prayer. So that concept of smudging and clearing the air, that type of energy here. Without a Care, disregard, ignorance, turning a blind eye. You can see there's a spider webs here. Things aren't being taken care of. in here, which is very different than that sort of, we think of life without a, without a care in the world, that sort of lackadaisical, which is true, which is works, but it also to the way that when we do sort of traipse about life without a care, things do get disregarded, things do get let go that maybe should not be let go. I love this. Forest afire, passion, aliveness, flashes of inspiration. I love the crystals and the mushrooms here versus what we might often see with fiery things, but it's glow. You can just see this beautiful glow to this card, at least in person. Radiotoxic, so toxic environment, emotional vampires. We see some sort of symbols of like poison and things of that nature. So, again, this is what she's talking about, that there are some cards that are like cloudy formations, this idea of scatteredness, in round and round. There was another one. I should keep them out. Even quarantine, a sense of being vulnerable. The fungi funeral is about perhaps excess that you might need to get rid of. The shaky foundations, things that are about to tip over, being bottled up and repressed and pent up. So there's definitely this idea of disregard and ignorance here. So we definitely do not have just all, go you, rah, 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 right? But let's get at the heart of things so we can figure out maybe why things aren't going very well. Here we have remnants of Atlantis, the past resurfacing, past lives, karma that you would think of. I like it that it's connected with Atlantis, which is kind of cool. Braving the storm, facing difficulties, finding courage and fortitude. I really like this, the image of this. This looks to be probably from the same artist or whoever put these images together. Same braid and dark hair, same dress, but we obviously have Stormy, and then we have the Moon Magic. You can obviously really see it because they're right next to each other, but in a spread, they're going to be mixed up. But I quite like this braving the storm, face the difficulties, swing into the lightning. Sometimes we just have to enjoy the storm, so to speak. And then the Moon Magic, sleep, dreams, rhythms, and cycles. This is a beautiful card. Purity, virtue, goodness, a pillar of society, sort of kind of standing on a pillar. This can also have its shadow side, right? This is probably one of my least favorites just because the art is that very, for me, it feels kind of like unfinished of the human bodies. But we have oceans of love, deep love, caring, emotional support. Pushes it to the cheesy side of things for me a little bit. But, we have this idea of love and connection. Love the dolphins, listening, guidance. I like that it's about the sound of dolphins. You often get the idea of play with dolphins, and I like that it's this idea of listening and hearing and clairaudience. Like that makes a lot of sense, and I like that connection. Don't forget your umbrella, having foresight, preparedness, having a contingency plan there. So let's check the weather out and at least be somewhat prepared. Intensity with this beautiful black unicorn, as well as with a crystal skull. Intense feelings, sexual passion, and fervor. I feel like I've seen this image before as well. Ice fishing, breakthroughs, increased self-awareness. I don't see any ice here in particular. Well, no, there is ice down here. There's, like, she's jumped through, I guess, because there is some ice down here. Image-wise, I'm not entirely sure what's happening, because she looks like she's still in water, but then we do see some ice flows down here, so I'm not entirely sure about that. I like the concept of ice fishing, and kind of breaking through and kind of getting beneath. The image, most of these images I do feel like have gone with the cards. This one, not quite as sure about. Dashing through the snow, minor setbacks, delays, and road blocks. So it's obviously very hard to see. Beautiful black Pegasus here, which I quite like. But it's, you know, you're going to have a bit of a delay because of the snow. We've all been through that. Time to fly south, travel, vacation, and getting away for a little bit. A pole shift. So we got this, you know, directional compass here. A change of heart, a turnaround, a reversal. All of a sudden this is going to start spinning. I do like that image. Resilience. So this is about toughness and endurance despite the cold, despite the snow and the sleet and the icicles, being able to endure. I like that. This is really sweet because it really looks like a an elfish version of a Norman Rockwell photo. It's really cool. Or not painting, that photo. Feeling numb. It does that, definitely has that sort of Four of Cups, like Rider-Waite-Smith Four of Cups feel to this. Looks a little bored, a little nonchalant. Definitely not actively engaged in his world. Frozen in time. So before we did have a thing about timing, but it's about time to act and deadlines and things, whereas this one is more frozen in time and time not moving, trying to avoid things changing. Think of Dr. Zhivago, and you know, when the old movie when they go to the house on the sleigh and everything in the house is frozen. The ice thaws, relief, alleviation, better days ahead. Some, you know, the ice is starting to break up here. Winter is ending. Things are starting to move. Pleasant distraction, amusement, entertainment, captivations. Obviously, she's being distracted by this lovely butterfly. I don't think of this so much as entertainment or amusement, but I can see the captivation here. Cute little tiny house going off grid. I love it. Unplugging and disappearing for a while. Here we have higher learning, education, research, apprenticeship with the books. No place like home, comforts of home, family, and leisure. It definitely has some feeling of like cartomancy or Sibylla or Lenormand or Kipper, like that, where some of it's very situational and it has a very specific energy that I think could be interesting in a reading. I'm very curious to try it. Here we have taking the high road, doing the right thing, loyalty, ethics. Anonymous, masked, hiding, secret surveillance. We do have a mask here. We have perhaps Odin and Odin's Hunin and Moonin. Is that what it is? I'm sure I said that wrong. Maybe spying and checking out the situation of what's going on. Good vibrations. I love the gramophone. I think these are called gramophones. And the concept of music and vibration. Keeping secrets. Shh. This is actually cute. Withdrawal symptoms, yearning, craving, pain over loss. She definitely looks withdrawn. Doesn't seem to be very pained, but I do like the image. Cleansing, purification, detoxification, and release. We have cleansing waters. Tea of transformation, healing, remedy, and positive change. The Sky Bridge for mediumship, intuition, and psychic experiences. Breathing room, freedom of movement, space, and ease. That's interesting because visually that looks like a lot of furniture in a small space, but there's nobody in it, so maybe getting yourself a little breath of fresh air, or you know, you know how you kind of take yourself off to a room where nobody's there so you can just take a breath for a minute. I can see that more than there being space because I feel like that's a little cramped with furniture, but I am claustrophobic. This is gorgeous. Spiritual alignment, serving the greater good, and focused on spirit. That's beautiful. This is beautiful too. Processing energies, an adjustment period, settling of energies. There's a lot of energies at play, so I can see stopping to process that. This one is really cute. 1111, opportunity, timelessness, and paying attention. You see 1111 pop up on all kinds of things. Caught in her web, manipulation, drama, and intrigue. Safe in your bubble, safe from harm, protection, being cocooned. Unretrieved soul, a lost self, a lack of grounding, and an out-of-body sense. I feel like we've seen this image. Yeah, so this one has the exact image just placed on a different background. You know, I feel like you probably could maybe just use a totally different one versus something so similar. But there does have this, while this is the sense of psychic experience and sort of detached in a more positive way, this does have, you can see the change in energy where it definitely looks like a lost soul there. Here we have put a spell on you, charm, seduction, and being won over. I definitely don't see her as being seductive. Some of the other ones I thought looked more seductive. She just looks like an adorable Tinkerbell. A little bit of a sexy Tinkerbell. But she does have that little love potion. Like, be careful that you're not being seduced by, you know, not good measures. Feng Shui butterfly, change, renewal, releasing obstructions. So just kind of starting fresh energy here, making sure the energy is correct this time. Meeting your twin, this idea of a kindred spirit, which doesn't need to be a twin soul. That can be kindred spirits to me, or friends, that people, friends or otherwise, that just meet and you have that sense of connection. Love the image there. Seer of souls, sensitivity, empathy, and understanding. Akashic records, we do again have the crystal skull, looks like almost like a book growing out of the ground. Deeper knowing, archaic wisdom, and history. The karmic scales for justice, atonement, and karmic balancing. The law of balance. See, I like this because we had this sort of unbalance here, or shaky balance here that's going to fall over, versus that really powerful, having that exact sort of equilibrium and balance to be able to do what this ballerina is doing. Sound healing, I quite like that. Vibrational drumming and things like that is powerful to me. Healing tone, self-expression, and music. So many different ways that music can be healing. Fantasy, imagination, conception, and daydreams. Wounded healer, so we kind of have a Chiron card here. Again, I'm not sure that the image quite looks like the wounded healer to me, but, you know, maybe she's wounded on the inside. Wisdom from experience, humanity, and care. I love this image. Miracle, healing, answered prayers, and remission. Hands that heal, healing ability, magic touch, and hands-on. So there are quite a few here in terms, in this empathy and relationships that have to do with healing. Let me look real quick. This is number 71. Yeah, so this is in the section of health and healing. So that makes sense. And then the divine feminine here with yin energy, feminine values, and maternal energy. Obviously, my only, you know, I think that's a fantastic, I think it's a beautiful card. I just wish there was the divine masculine. So we have the yin and the yin, especially when she has yin here. So I think, you know, could there be, and she seems open to suggestions, so you never know. Maybe she'll say, okay, let's add a masculine card in there. Because if, you know, I love, you know, we have this yin, well, there's not a yin without a yang. So we need a yang, you know, masculine values and paternal energy, perhaps, to be able to go with that card. And I understand it's in the position of healing, which is often connected with the with the yin or the feminine energy. So I can certainly see why that's the case. You all know for me, it's just a little bit of a pet peeve that I do like to see some masculine energy. I will say I don't believe there's any male figures in the card. I mean, you could argue, is this a male or female, I suppose. But in terms of there's the one boy who was cute. Certainly I will say the unicorns feel very powerful and masculine. Obviously the cat could be either or. We did have the one lover here that is masculine. It does feel a little bit more feminine, but a lot of them don't have that. There's a little boy there. So a lot of them don't actually have any humans at all. So it's not, you know, it feels slightly more feminine, maybe because we think of that in terms of healing. So yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, I'd love to see the divine masculine in here as well. But again, I understand why it's there in terms of healing energy often being equated with the feminine. Zip back. So there we have that. I'm going to go ahead and see how they shuffle. They do have a glossy, they feel kind of, to be honest, which I'm going to see, I love how these shuffle. But if you have the Cesarebido, they feel kind of like that. They're glossy and slippy, but these are glossy and slippy, but I love to shuffle them. And I feel like this is probably going to be similar. Of course, now I'm probably going to... Yeah, this feels similar to the Cesarebido. I love to shuffle the Cesarebido, whatever. Yeah, this shuffles really nicely. I know you're not supposed to shuffle gilded edges, but I do. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it shuffles gorgeously. They are slippy and they do kind of slide around a little bit, but so does that other deck, and I still use it all the time. I'm, of course, a fan of matte cardstock, but that's a preference. There are lots of people who, I'm sure, like this kind of cardstock. And again, I do love, love, love to shuffle this. So let's take a quick look at, I'll have to, you know, obviously as all things, my intention is at the end of the year to kind of touch bases with some of these. So I'll be excited to give this a go because I feel like it's going to have some cartomancy feel to it, which I quite enjoy. But how that pans out in terms of using it, she gives a couple. Of course, you can do a one card, which is certainly there. Just pull a card. I don't ever pull. I can't say that. I very rarely ever pull one card. But you can do a past. I have them upside down. Present. Future. And then a lesson to be learned. I like the lesson card that she adds in here. I mean, they're really pretty together. So the past being a time of clearing, releasing, and it also could be a message to let go of the past. It's time to sort of cleanse the past, let it go. This isn't a time. Sometimes it is a time to focus on the past, but right now it's a time to let it go. The present is, there is a sense of there's still some pain over loss, right? That may need to be let go, right? This may just not be the time for this. Whereas moving into the future, let there be light. It's a time to let the light in. Again, I'm just kind of doing this in a quick way. And then a lesson here is interesting because it's the flight plan. Having a way out. And this is interesting in terms of the holidays, right? That sometimes the holidays are really difficult for people and maybe needing to let go of some of the past things there, even though it's really difficult right now dealing with holiday issues and what those might bring up. But lean into the light of the holidays and give yourself a way out. This is something that I have learned. One of my biggest things that I've learned, no, that's not true. I've learned some huge things with grief. But in terms of the day-to-day management of grief, especially in the early year or two, is giving yourself a plan out. still staying connected to the world, but giving yourself an out, such as, you know, okay, I'm going to go to this holiday party with my family because it's important, but I'm going to leave in 30 minutes. Or if I'm struggling, I'm only going to stay a half an hour, and I've got myself an out if I need to. So I think that's a really good lesson there. So, I mean, to me, this reads quite well for that. So there's an example. The 8-card spread, let's just give that a try here. So the base of it is similar to what we just did, in that there is the past, there's no place like home, the present, miracle, a lesson to be learned, don't forget your umbrella, make a plan. See, because we got that last one, I'm like, okay, we really need to make a plan, people. And then a probable future, which is interesting because that's a sad card, right? That's a difficult card in terms of lost self, not being grounded. And so have your umbrella. It's kind of giving you that heads up. Maybe have your umbrella because there is some potential of being really disconnected and ungrounded. And clearly there is some need here for healing that is going to take a little time and may not quite reach that potential. So be prepared for that. And then it has an option to explore. So explore the divine feminine. Another option is, so maybe in conjunction with each other, how do we see sort of feminine values, maternal energy, passive, receptive energy, but at the same time, feeling like you're underneath a clock or feeling like that clock is ticking. There's a lot, that's kind of interesting, right? And then we have an external factor to pay attention to, is this idea of something being masked and needing some breathing room. So we can see some things that need to be paid attention to for the future here. Again, visually, I think these look really amazing together. I think that the tone of the cards, the color tones here are all work really well. You don't have cards that are really jarring. They have the similar color palette, which looks really beautiful. I actually like the white borders, I have to say. Because it's a bit of a collage, although I have seen this trimmed and it was stunning. So if I had a choice to pick, I don't know. I probably would pick the borderless, to be honest. But I have to say, laid out, I actually like the cleanness of the white borders. So I'm not, like, I wouldn't trim this one personally. But you'll have to take a look at the borderless if this is a deck you're interested in and see how that, you know, which one you actually like. But I have to say, I do like the white borders here. I think it visually looks really gorgeous. I think there's a lot to be worked with that particular spread. That's certainly one that I would try. But I did want to look at this where we pull one for the front and one for the back, because that really interests me. I'm going to pull the middle one at the split for the actual card, and then pull the bottom card for the back and see what we get from that. Again, I feel like there's a lot here to dive into. There's another guidebook coming that will do a little bit more with how to use this in other ways in divination, say for healing type energies and such, that will be coming but isn't out yet. So I would pull this one, the unretrieved soul, and then pull this one for spiritual hygiene. So now let's see what we get. So we do have the sense of lack of grounding, feeling out of body, pieces of ourselves maybe not fully connected in. So that's sort of the primary card. Let me go back here. And then let's take a look at, this is spiritual hygiene. So let's see what it says. Spiritual hygiene. Drawing this card back advises you to focus on your spiritual hygiene. In other words, strengthening, purifying, and protecting yourself at an energetic or spiritual level. For example, how has the use of prayer, smudging, meditation, visualization, or positive intention impacted your life for the better? Where can you focus on giving or receiving energy work, such as using crystals or sound, as we saw in here, vibrational drumming, those types of things. So this is saying that there's some spiritual cleansing and hygiene. We take our showers, we brush our teeth, we do all those sort of things to keep up on our physical hygiene, but how are we keeping up on those energetic levels? Because in some ways, perhaps we're experiencing this lack of grounding because we need to put those hygiene practices, those spiritual hygiene practices into play so that we aren't so ungrounded. So using this as sort of a focus for the other reading. And of course you could do, I'm just grabbing some cards here, you could of course do a 3-card reading, or whatever card reading you want, and then pull another for the end and say, okay, what focus of this do I need to go on, and then using the back. So the things that are in the back, let me just show you what's on the backs. Personal physical, so this is your physical reality. Collective physical, which is, of course, that makes sense. It's the collective as a global, collective, community level type thing. The personal emotional makes sense. And then the collective emotional. Hypervigilance and illusions. So advises that it would be in your best interest or would serve your growth at this time to focus on how you use your imagination. So it's this idea of hypervigilance, what you should be vigilant of. Industry and technology. Focus on how your life and experiences are impacted by industry and technology. Purification and release makes sense. I don't think we need to explain that. Spiritual hygiene, which we just talked about. Empathy and relationships. And then the unknown, which is again that idea of the unknowable that we talked about before. So I feel like there's a lot going on here to work with. And I'll be curious to see how they play out in terms of a reading, right? Because we have straight up oracle deck, at the back side of it, the front side of it. I've got these little whopper jawed. There are also the suits within. I don't know what I've done there, folks. I have made a mess. So there are suits within the cards themselves. It isn't noted on the cards anywhere, the suits, but they do have it in the guidebook by the number. So you could also look that up. Say you were doing the high road, right? You could then go here. Of course, this would be something that I would stick a sticky note on. And see, this is number 45. So we know it's part of the technology. What's on the back? Industry and technology. But there isn't ones that say land and earth, so these are a little bit, these break down even further. But we're talking a little bit about how our ethics, our loyalty, those types of things. But we could come back to that and see what suits it is in, and then we have the larger grouping of suits, or the broader grouping of suits on the back of the cards. So there are many layers that are I think here to be explored, and see how these work out for us. Let's just do how we normally do in a reading on live chat, just kind of a message for everybody, and see what we get. Again, really like how they shuffle, even though they are very slippy. Same issue I have with Sisera bead. I love to shuffle it, but they're very slippy. High road, and you saw me shuffle it. Apparently we need to hear that. Celestial encounter. and a cherished pet. So we have doing the right thing, taking the high road that is going to lead us to the stars. I quite like that. That when we're taking the high road, when we're being our highest self, of course, we are much more than on that vibrational plane to get those messages beyond the veil, to have those encounters that are more than just physical encounters, that go deeper and broader and higher. When we are doing the right thing, when we are taking that high road, when we are, acting in accordance with our values and our ethics, then we're going to be more likely to be able to have those encounters, right? And what's interesting though is then we have the cherished pet. So we have that sense of we're going to meet those energies, whether it be the divine, if you work with the divine, whether it just means a meeting with other people who are in their highest vibrational level, and that's going to bring about that sense of care and cherishedness that we feel like what we put towards our cherished pets. But there is that sense that we can feel that sense of attunement and attention and connection with higher energies when we are working from a place of the high road. So yeah, I'm just kind of playing around with this a little bit. Again, I do intend to kind of play with this, not play with this, that sounds less serious than I mean, but give it a good reading go, and I will check back with you and just in terms of how they read, because I do think there's a lot here beyond just the as a straight up oracle deck. I'll be interested to see what she does further with the larger guidebook. So there you go. I hope this helps. Again, some people have asked me to do a look through or walk through of this deck. So if you're one of those people, I hope that this helps you in being able to decide whether or not this is a deck for you or not. And thank you to Mandy for allowing me to do this walkthrough for you guys so that you can take a peek at it.